it's difficult. We really underestimated how hard it is to run a podcast. But we did do 17 episodes.
I heard the stat was that if you make it over 3 episodes in a podcast, you're in the top 10%.
So we're already doing well so far.
So we can give ourselves a little pat on the back.
Yes. And on top of that, if you end up doing 100 episodes, you're now in the top 1% of podcasts that continue posting episodes. And so the fact that we did 17 episodes of what we would call season 1 actually says a lot.
But we're also taking the time now to take a step back, reflect on what we've learned, and also cast vision to what's ahead.
A lot of YouTube channels, or I would say with most businesses, let's just say you start building a snowball and you start rolling it down the hill. It's going to start building and it's going to start catching more snow and it's going to start getting bigger. And as it gets bigger, it starts getting faster. And you've got to keep up with it. And unfortunately, I think when we started this podcast, we built a small snowball and then it started rolling by itself and we started chasing it down that hill, unable to catch it.
Yep, that's exactly it.
There was a point when actually what we did is, I don't know, I'm still working on this metaphor. One of us threw a net. I don't know.
We threw spears, we threw nets, we threw any object we could get our hands on to try to slow this thing down.
And we were able to catch the snowball. But what it meant is we could finally catch our breaths. And now we catch our breaths, we're able to reflect. Okay, we should let this snowball roll, but how can we ensure that we can keep up with it?
We burned out. Let's be honest. At the end of season 1, we were so tired. We were doing so many jobs. And so a big thing that we're trying to work on in season 2, and a big thing that I've learned from season 1 is how to have a team, how to run a business. We're both creatives. We don't have a ton of experience in running businesses. And that's a huge part of if you're making a podcast, if you're making a YouTube channel, even if you're making a film, there's a lot of people management and organization that goes into it that us as editors, we're not super used to. So that's a huge learning curve for us.
That's sort of the creative paradox where it's like we kind of feel like we have to do everything ourselves. But there was one episode with Michelle Carre and her team, and it was the director, Garrett. He said, always hire someone who could do it better than you. He put that seed in my head, and I was like, yeah, you're right. Of course, I would love to be able to do everything. And so it's like for my ego, it's for my I run the whole podcast today. I wanted that. But actually, it burned us out really, really quickly when we're trying to do a good chunk of this by ourselves. And so with that lesson, hiring is the name of the game. We don't just want Tyson to be the single editor of these podcasts because that's going to burn him out very quickly. That's not fair on him. So we want to be able to have a team of editors who are able to edit these podcasts. And so ideally we have multiple podcasts being edited at the same time. These intros / trailers can take 3 to 4 days to make. I sometimes make some of them. Daniel makes some of them. It's balancing the workload, balancing the load. That's something that we've come to learn as well.
We're also wondering what direction do we want to roll this snowball into?
That's true.
Where does it want to land once it gets to the bottom of the hill?
Where do you want the snowball to roll down next?
A question that I've loved to ponder this past month is, what is your primary aim? Essentially, what is your goal in your life? Regardless of being a creator, regardless of everything, what is that purpose that you have? And what's really fascinating is that we have very similar primary aims, you and I, and that is to create culture shaping stories. At the bottom of the hill, wherever that snowball is going, we're going to try to land on a culture shaping story some way or another. Yeah. And the podcast is a vehicle, is that snowball to help us get there.
I think that's something that we both relate to a lot. I think, especially with the vast majority of my career being on YouTube, I've now become hyper aware of, you can make a really, really great video. You get it online, everyone talks about it. 3-4 days later, maybe a week if you're lucky, everyone's moved on. And once I've had that realization, I mean, actually, this might be a bit of an issue. I think truly some of the most memorable content or some of the most memorable films that we've seen are, well, memorable. So as in, we all know where we were when we first saw Inception. We all know where we were, I would honestly say, watching Avengers Infinity War. We all know where we were when we were watching, I'd even say HBO's The Last of Us. If you've been watching that, you should be watching that. It is absolutely fantastic. Episode 3 is now going to be in my memory. That is now, I would say, a core memory of how I think filmmaking should be. And I realized I don't get that much of an experience with YouTube content, but I know that we can, and I know that I really want it. And so part of it is us also discovering, well, how can we make memorable content on YouTube that does stand the test of time? That you could look back at this video in a year or two's time and not go, oh, that was a great period in YouTube history. No, that video still feels like alive today. And the best way to do that is to explore how we can. And that's what it is about this podcast. It is about learning how we can generate long-lasting memories on web media. A lot of us do have that desire to tell stories. But I think we've all had those experiences, and we still have those experiences where it's like, I need to tell you this information, but I do not know how.
Right.
And part of it is storytelling is a skill. Editing is a skill. We want the opportunity for everyone, as many people as we can, to discover how they can tell their story, how they can tell how they feel. Some of my biggest emotional expressions have been told through editing. And so if we were able to help ourselves discover and learn, alongside our audiences help discover and learn how they can express themselves and tell the stories that they want to tell, that's what we want.
That's what we stand for.
That's what we stand for. That's what we're really interested in discovering and learning. And then making the core memory content on YouTube that I am really excited to be seeing soon.
And we would love to have you on the team if you're really interested in helping other people tell their own stories and helping yourself tell your own stories, and really exploring the art of filmmaking.
We are learning how to tell stories. And so with the guests and the conversations that we have had on season 1, what did we learn?
Let's start at the beginning of season 1 with our first guest, Ryan Trahan.
Absolutely.
What I learned from Ryan is, I think we had the same takeaway, which is redemptive content.
Instead of trying to toil for rewards, toil for profit, we're going to create for restoration. Instead of exhausting ourselves to just make an extra buck, we are going to creatively instill in this project as much as we can so that whoever receives it as a gift and is rejuvenated by it.
In order to tell stories, we're going to try to create content as a gift instead of creating content in the mindset of what can I receive from this and what am I getting? Am I getting views? Am I getting subscribers? Am I getting dollars? Am I getting followers? What is it that I'm receiving? And literally turning that part of your brain off, because as humans, we're super greedy. We want to get recognized. We want to receive everything. We want to get paid back for our work. But instead of having that mindset, I learned from Ryan that see your content as a gift, see your content as an art piece, as a gift to make people feel better, to be happy.
The way I like to phrase it is, I made this for you.
I made this for you.
It's a very obscure reference there, but it's an attitude shift. It's a mindset shift. And it's something that Ryan talked about that he had quite a while ago. And then with that mindset shift meant that he makes some of the most unique content on YouTube today. And I think that's something that we think about a lot. We could very easily make this podcast with the intent of like, how can we make this good for us?
Yep.
But a lot of it is us acknowledging we want to learn ourselves and then share the lessons that we have ourselves to you as well. It's the rising tide lifts all boats type of metaphor.
Exactly.
And so I think that helped, for that being, I think, the second or third episode that we recorded, really set the tone of what we want this podcast to be as well. We want our episodes to be a gift to you.
We don't want to create episodes that are automatically going to get the most views. We're not going to try to exploit you as the viewer in any way. What we're going to try to do is share the lessons that we find the most valuable and the people that are really shaping storytelling. No matter how many views the podcast gets, we just want to give you a gift.
There is this concern that I've always had where I've typecast myself as the YouTube editor. I know how to do the fast editing. I know how to hook you in right at the start, and I know how to keep the flow and engagement as optimized as possible. That's what I know. That's where I typecast. If you put me on a HBO show, if you put me on a Netflix show, you do give me a feature-length movie, I'm going to be terrible at it because that's not what I know, so I should never do it. That was an assumption I've had for a very, very long time. And Zach Arnold, who's the Netflix editor for Cobra Kai, challenged that philosophy. He said, well, every editor has their strengths. Every editor knows their language, but it doesn't mean that you can't learn a new language.
Every single format or medium of editing is learning how to speak a different language, right? So I don't want to speak just one language, which is long form dramatic action. I want to be able to speak multiple languages. So I enjoy the process of learning and acquiring those skills. So when you're younger, think, maybe I don't want to do this the rest of my life, but this is a skill that will serve me for my entire career. So enjoy the process of acquiring those skills.
So if I was to be jumping on a HBO show, there is a new language that I will have to learn. It doesn't mean that I can't do it. It just means I have to learn a new language. But then also with the same sense with, let's say, other web media creators that I work with, I have mastered the language of Logan's editing. But if I jump to another creator, to an extent, it's a new accent. Let's just say Logan is English. And I move to another creator. That's me moving up north in the UK. And now I have to learn the accent of Scottish. And then over time, just by being in there, I would learn that accent. If I was to jump to another creator, it's essentially learning a new accent. But if I was to pay close attention towards it, I could definitely start picking up that dialect and those accents. And if I wanted to move on to different forms of media, I will have to learn French, I will have to learn German, but I want to. And so being willing to learn a new language and not cutting myself off from being typecast means that, I'm willing to now learn French.
And the other thing I loved about Zach, too, for me personally, is the fact that he was a solution provider.
Yeah.
He found problems and found solutions for them automatically. So that's something that we learned also in season 1, is that there are 2 different kinds of editors, or even just people in the world. There's problem givers and problem solvers.
Yeah.
And Zach made a very, very conscious effort, even in the way that he got the Cobra Kai job, to be a problem solver.
Yeah.
He went in, he didn't put in any job applications. He just said, hey guys, I see that you're doing something special. I see that you have a problem. I think that you can fix A, B, and C.
Yeah.
And this is how you're going to do it.
Yeah.
And he got a meeting and he landed the job just like that, just because he said, I can make you guys better by doing this.
Let me cut my version of it, because if I show you the version that's written, you're going to see that it doesn't work. And I just want you to see my solution. So they never saw the version that was written. They saw my version. They're like, this is a really great start. Then we workshopped it and we fixed it. But I always want to get it as far as I think it needs to get, then let them take it over, as opposed to it is your responsibility to fix all the problems.
And I think we've both experienced those types of editors, or I think we've probably been both of those types of editors.
Absolutely, we've been that.
There's been cases where I'm editing a video and I don't know what to do here. And so I give it to my clients and I say, hey, I don't know what to do here. Can you tell me what to do? And so they have to tell me how to fix the problems that I probably created. And I think that's not particularly good flow, because to an extent, it means that you start following orders. But that is still reasonable and good editor to be able to, because it means you're learning. To an extent, if you're learning a new language, you are going to have to be the problem provider. So therefore, they can teach you that language. But then in time, you should be the problem solution. There are cases when I would provide someone a finished video. I probably pulled my hair out trying to figure out. They watch it and went, yeah, that was great. Well done. Yeah, wow, that was really easy. No, it wasn't.
You didn't see the hours of grueling sweat I did and all the freaking, that wasn't supposed to be a montage, but I made it a montage.
Yeah. You have no idea how much I've been through. That's the problem with problem solution editors. With so that's the unfortunate downside towards it. But I'm now making myself being the problem solution type of editor. Yeah. It's probably a better thing that they don't know the stress, because I think that's probably what they hired us for, so we load on the stress.
Exactly. And so we get the project done faster because they don't have to point out all those problems and say, figure it out. It was super fun to talk with our friend Chancellor. Mm-hmm. That was amazing. He edited for Taylor Swift and many other amazing music videos and commercials. And the biggest thing that I learned from him was actually a technical thing. It was a on-set workflow that he does with the director, Joseph Kahn.
Yeah.
So he literally basically screen records the monitor on set, brings those proxies straight into Avid, straight into his NLE, and then starts cutting it. And literally by the end of the shoot day, it's a 1-day music video shoot, he has the entire music video cut. And I was so mind blown by that.
Yeah.
And they just send it straight off to VFX, and it's the fastest workflow that I've ever seen.
It's really, really fascinating experience. I think it's something that I would love to have that experience one day.
It makes us wonder, how else could you apply that? Baby Driver, they did that exact same workflow.
Some of those scenes in Baby Driver was designed to be with the music.
Right.
And so I think definitely it works very well there, because they've got to make sure that they are able to get the timing. These were practical shots, cars drifting all around town. You've got to make sure the timing that Edgar Wright had designed worked. What other instances could there be? I think with a massive creator that has multiple cameras, I think that might be a bit difficult because you have to sync it all first before you start making up those cuts. But I would say if you're doing a single camera production, which I think a lot of creators are doing, maybe it could be quite interesting having the editor essentially shadow the experience.
Hello, cheeky segue. There's a few products we would like to share with you. So take a look. Get funding for your content. That's it. That's what Creative Juice can offer.
Juice funds have helped creators upgrade their gear, hire editors, or start the podcast they've always dreamed of.
Which was amazing for us because we really underestimated how expensive a podcast is.
It's a lot of beans.
But what's really exciting about Juice, though, is that you stay in total control of your content.
Which is awesome because it's only you that knows exactly what you need for your channel.
Juice just supports you with funding and resources. Think invoicing, expenses, income, and more. Let Juice automate the busy work of your business so you can do what you do best. Creating.
70% of Juice Fund's creators used funding to build out their teams.
And so you could use those funds to, well, hire an editor. Wait, we're editors.
We're editors.
You could hire us.
Go to the link in the description and sign up for Juice today at getjuice.com/getfunding. We need to have a serious conversation. I need you to stop spending your entire day looking for music that actually isn't even that good.
But Track Club is actually full of bloody great music. Their entire library is banger after banger and mash.
We also know that audio is essential for creating an emotional world for your audience. This is why beyond having great music, Track Club has Mixlab, which allows you to use stems to customize it to your situation.
For example, there's this documentary song that I really liked that sounded hopeful. But if I soloed the vocals, that sounded scary. Or I just used the mallets to create a build. And Track Club makes it super simple to avoid copyright strikes. Paste your channel's URL into Track Club and Bob's your uncle, your videos will be cleared automatically.
My uncle's name's Dave. Guess what? They're offering your first month for free.
So go to the link in the description and get your free month of Track Club today.
One guest that I didn't know what to expect, but I ended up really, really enjoying it. I think it ended up becoming one of my favorite episodes as well, was the one we had with the Black Adam editor, Mike Sale. His energy was fantastic. I really, really enjoyed what he had to say, and I think he taught me some really, really interesting editing formulas. One of the instances was Black Adam as a character is quite an irredeemable character, but he is the main character, and so we have to make him relatable. We have to make sure that we feel like his actions are justified.
Right.
We want to empathize with him. And one of those ways is with comedy.
You know, if we're doing the action comedy, it's kind of the opposite, where you're going like, this is very dramatic. This is intense. Joe.
Ready. You just dropped the
I liked that formula. Adding comedic effect towards those expressions to an extent meant that we found it okay that he was killing people. Because of comedy.
Comedy makes you relatable.
Yeah.
It really does.
The timing of that interview was actually perfect.
Yes.
Because at that time, we were both in Greenville editing a Mr. Beast video. When we recorded that interview, and then the next day, I'm back in the editing room trying to figure out this beat that wasn't working. I had to relay information, but then also, knowing there's a Mr. Beast video, it has to be optimized. It has to ensure that you don't have a reason to click off. And that's a really, really hard balance because to an extent there was some education towards it. Fortunately, with the footage, we had one of the Mr. Beast characters, Nolan, who was very, very funny. And so he gave me some really, really great jokes. And I used that as a formula to then sprinkle in education and information. We're having to give these backstories to people who are suffering from cataracts and also going to have surgery so they can see again. So that's your character development. It's kind of seriousness, but Mr. Beast's videos are known for being quite comedic and fast. I relayed that information. So I gave some interesting character development to one person. I gave some interesting character development to two person. And to an extent, that also sets up the pattern. But then with the third person was some more information, but then it was unbuttoned with a joke from Nolan.
What's it like? What do you see?
Blur. How long have you not been able to work for?
4 months. Did you hear about the cross-eyed teacher? She couldn't control her pupils.
I'm gonna need anesthetic soon.
And so using the formula that Mike Sale taught us on the podcast, I was then able to literally replicate perfectly the next day.
And it was perfect timing for me too, because right during that interview, a huge thing that Mike talked about was the shame that you feel when you watch your edit with somebody else.
Yes.
If you're cutting for each other, you could do an experiment where you think like, oh, I wonder how he'll react to that. I wonder how he'll react to that. And if you watch it, you'll feel differently about what you made, thinking about what the other person will feel. When I play something for somebody, almost doesn't matter who it is. It's like I'm watching what I made for the first time. And I know before they say anything when it doesn't work, because I have a very strong feeling while I'm watching it. And that feeling is shame.
I felt that. It's so interesting where you're working on an edit. You're like, okay, yeah, this is good. This is good. This is good. And then you're like, hey, come in the room, like watch my edit. And they don't have to say a word. They just stand there and you watch your edit with them and you are like, yeah, that sucks. Yeah, I think I need to switch that around. I hung on that shot a little bit too long. And you know automatically, you can give yourself a whole list of notes that you didn't see because you were in the zone and you didn't know that anybody else was watching. So when I was working on my Beast edit, we were on I was on a different video and I was so motivated at that point to call in some of the assistant editors, some of the other people on the Beast team and say, hey, watch this 1 minute section. What do you think? It was just as Mike said, where they didn't have to say a word. I knew like, okay, that's a problem. That's a problem.
But you felt it. You felt it. Yeah. It's we can't see the forest through the trees problem. When you're in the thick of it and you're seeing all those layers and like you can't see what's wrong with it anymore. You show it to someone, anyone. It could even be your cat.
Yep.
Showed them the video and then suddenly, you feel that shame and now you know what's wrong with it. And now you know how you can be better at it. And so to an extent, creating that separation for yourself and then just knowing that someone else is watching this for the first time. So if you don't know how to make your video better, make sure you shame yourself. That sounded better in my head. Wait a minute. It sounded better in my head, but I think but the logic is still there.
We also had some of the best feature film editors from last year on the show, and it was our first season. That was freaking crazy. We're so lucky for that. And one of those editors was Nicholas Mansour, who edited Nope. That was directed by Jordan Peele. I was so curious about how they ended up getting to that point because Nick said that the first cut was something like ridiculous, like 3 hours.
He said 4. It was 4 hours.
That absolutely blows my mind. The fact that they had that much content that they tried to whittle that down and just take months and months to figure it out. And so I wanted to know what the process was like. And what he said was that versions are so important when it comes to whittling a scene down, when it comes to figuring out what the best combination of a scene is. Because when you're editing, you have literally millions of choices to make.
I'd send that to him and he'd say, great, we know we have that. Can I see the one where we really go into it? And I'd be like, okay. So then we do lots of versions that are much longer, much more indulgent. And then you'd watch that whole first act.
Lots of times it can be very, very overwhelming. You know, even if you're starting a scene, you get that blank timeline syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
You're terrified because there's unlimited choices. And what he said the solution was to just create versions.
Options,
just like create options, do the scene, do it again. But what if I do this, but do it again? And what if I cut to a close up on this shot? What if I hold on this shot? What if I remove the reverse? And just creating versions and versions and versions of one scene. And then combining that with Mike's sales advice when showing it to somebody, it'll really help you get a sense of what the right answer is.
Yeah.
There's not a perfect right answer, but lots of times the footage kind of will let you know how it wants to be edited, and you can arrive at that by doing lots of versions.
All I've ever done is what would be one version and then make that version better and better and better and better and better and polish that one. But now I'm thinking, what if I just tried a different path? What if I did that and then tried a completely different version? And then once I'd done that one, made a third version. And once I'd done that one, made a fourth version of what would be the same scene. I think we often get very precious with the first version that we make. And that's the version that's only going to exist and everything else doesn't matter and just polish that version. But now it's like, now I've been very open-minded of creating options. And also it comes back to maybe understanding editing languages. If you're trying to learn what editing language is, you do create multiple options and then you can then present those to the client. They can also say, I like this option. And you can maybe understand them a little bit better. And then you can continue down that way and then start becoming a problem solution editor because you now understand what they want in the movie more as well.
That's true. It is a fantastic way to learn the language of whatever it is that you're making.
If you don't know the language, actually create options.
Yeah.
That's just the tip of the iceberg of what we learned on these first episodes. It gets me incredibly excited about what we can learn and what audiences can learn. And so we can all then become better storytellers as well.
So what do you think? What can we do better starting season 2? What did we learn from season 1? How are we going to get there?
To be honest, I think we've already figured out, I would say, the conversations we want to have. It is having a HBO editor and then a web creator editor or creator the next week. And then the next week we can have one from a major release movie. Colin from Colin and Samir really said something fascinating. And this was my realization of that idea. He mentioned he loves the fact that we have a Star Wars editor in our videos.
Yeah.
And right next to it is Ryan Trahan. And he loves that normalization where it's like, of course, we can have the biggest Star Wars show of last year, Andor, next to what was the biggest YouTube series with Ryan Trahan's Penny series. And that seemed normal. That seemed obvious. That seemed fine. Yeah. I loved that realization. Despite a lot of the challenges we did have with starting this podcast, I'm already seeing some really beautiful results that are giving me really excited. And yes, we had to have the break. We had to reflect on how we can be better for this next season of content. But now that we know what we are, what we're trying to do, I'm really excited about what we can be doing next. I also think that we ourselves can have more conversations. There was an instance when I think we both got a little bit worried of like, are we interesting enough? Like, should we just have the guests? There was a moment that I think we both kind of acknowledged where it was like, okay, we need to film an episode for both of us. And we both went, I don't know what to talk about. That did get me a little bit worried. Like, are we interesting people?
Right.
Like, so I think part of it is, I think we need to find things that we're also excited to talk about.
I think it's a combination of pretty much 2 facets. It's learning from the best to edit, the best to storytell, the best in the industry from all industries. But then it's also taking those hot button topics, like, for example, maybe AI. Maybe we'll talk, we'll have a conversation about AI in the near future.
I'm one of the few people who's been loving the AI developments that we can have in post-production.
But we'll talk about that, and we'll chat about it and about the developments of the industry and how to best navigate that as a creator, as a storyteller, as an editor.
But even on our break, one of the things that I was really excited about that you did in your break is actually you released an editing course.
I did. It's been released a couple times in 1-week segments where it was open for a week and then we worked together as cohorts through the entire course. And this January was the time where I actually wanted it to be accessible to anyone and everyone. So it's open at all times.
Your course has a really wide accessibility towards it. It can be those who've just started editing or those with also really great experience, and you're giving them a step-by-step guide on your editing formula. But then on top of that, you're also teaching them how to navigate the business side of this. I think many courses just give you the creative side and then just leave you out there to dry. Whereas you go, hey, here is how you can be a creative. Here's some formulas on how to think. But then also, here's how you can navigate the business. Here's how you can do the business.
There's so much valuable information. I really, really believe in it. I basically took all the film school everything I learned in film school and packed it into a nice little package for you so that you can get started on your career. And it's so accessible. I mean, I'm not going to say it's easy because it takes a lot of work. It's very, very possible to make an incredible living as an editor, to make up to $100,000 a year and well beyond.
Absolutely.
And it's just something I'm really passionate about because I think freedom is so important. And if you can figure out how to provide for yourself with a creative job and create as much freedom as you can in your life, like, please do it. It's awesome.
It's absolutely worth taking this course just to learn that. The link of that is also in the description. Our first season was 17 episodes. This was like the pilot season, us finding our legs. I think moving on now, I think we're going to do this, I would say, in 10 episode batches. So we're going to broadcast 10 episodes, take a little bit of a breather, and then give you guys another 10 episodes, a weekly 10 episodes. Every 10 episodes will be season 2, next 10 will be season 3, and so on. But part of it is just learning and educating. As I said, the rising tide lifts all boats. And so we want to discover and learn so you guys can discover and learn. And I'm just really excited to see what we can discover and learn this year.
It's all about learning.
So season 2 has an amazing lineup of guests, like the editors of Euphoria, the lead editor of The Try Guys and how she manages multiple characters. And we even learned how to edit a Pixar film. Subscribe now to not miss the next guest.